Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to another episode of Monday Mongo. I'm Venkat and this is just me an open source channel. Right, in this video let's look at MongoDB Replica Set. So I've got a little notes here how to deploy a replica set and what's the purpose of a replica set, and let's go through a quick demo of how we can deploy and how we can do the failover and all those things. Excuse me. Right. So in a replica set, you have one primary node and two secondary nodes. So that's the architecture to start with. First, the primary there's only going to be one primary node and two secondary nodes. So to start with, you need to have a replica set of at least three members, and I think a maximum you can have up to 50 members, but no matter how big is your replica set is, you can have a maximum of one primary, right? And all the application, the client application, will read and write from the primary, not from the secondary by default, but that can be configured. um, so how does the replication happens? The secondary nodes are kind of backup or standby MongoDB instances, because all the writes and reads happens on the primary MongoDB instance, not on the secondary. But the secondary keeps themselves up to date with the primary by the replication. So whenever data gets written on a primary data set, it also gets returned to something called oplog journal. It's called operation log. So basically, whatever happens in your database, it gets recorded in an operation log called oplog. And then these secondary nodes will retrieve the oplog from the primary and then apply the transactions that are in the oplog to their own data set. So each of these members, they've got their own data set, and it is for high availability and disaster recovery. And the important thing to consider here is these MongoDB instances are to be run on a different machines, not on the same machine, because that will be a single point of failure. Right, let's go to the next slide. And this is the replication. So the secondary doesn't always have to replicate from primary. The secondary node can also replicate from another secondary node, which I will show you during the failover demo. And there is a heartbeat check going on between all the nodes. The I think the interval can be configured, how often it needs to check the health of the other nodes and so on. So if the primary MongoDB instance fails, one of the secondary will take the primary role, and the process is called election. So the secondaries will vote, and then it will elect a new primary. So in this case, this node has become the new primary, and this secondary node, which was originally syncing to this primary node, is now syncing, replicating from the new primary node. And when we bring back the failed primary node, it will be staying as a secondary node. So it won't take the primary position until the next failover happens. Okay. So if you want to redirect your read request to secondary nodes instead of the primary node, you can do that. The connection string that you pass when you're trying to connect to a remote MongoDB instance, I will show you how to do that. It's just addition of one parameter so that the read requests are going to the secondary nodes, secondary instances, and not the primary ones. So the primary can deal with the write request. So this is to spread the load. So if we have just one primary and all the read and writes are going to it, it might get overloaded depending on the load that you're having in your database. So in that case, if you think you're having lots of load, you can spread the load by separating out the read requests and sending them to secondary nodes, and then the write goes to the primary node. So the write operation definitely has to go on the primary node. Okay, enough talking, and I'm going to go to the demo section. For the demo, I've got three virtual machines. They're not actually virtual machines, they are Linux LXC containers. If I show you LXC list, so MongoDB 0, MongoDB 1, and MongoDB 2. I've got three Linux containers. These are CentOS 7 containers. You can use virtual machines, you can use your host machine, you can use these LXC containers, whichever way you want, you can use it. The idea is to have three separate machines where you can install three separate MongoDB containers or MongoDB installations. Okay, so each of these instance has got its own IP address, and I've installed Docker. So if you want to know how to install LXC container, I've done a video on getting started with LXC container. You can watch that. And if you want to know how to install Docker, I've also done a video. You should be able to search it from my channel. Okay, so let me log into one of the machine. LXC list, MongoDB 0, MongoDB 1, MongoDB 2, and I'm going to be connecting to these MongoDB instances from my host machine. So my host machine is a Manjaro Arch Linux based distribution. I've installed Mongo Shell, and the second video in this Monday Mongo series, I covered about the installation of the server tools and the Mongo shell and so on. So if you want to install just the Mongo shell, go through that video where I've explained how to install various different components of Mongo in Ubuntu, CentOS, and Arch Linux and so on. So I've got the Mongo shell installed, so I'll be connecting from my host machine to these machines. Okay, and the other thing I did was cat etc host. So to my etc host file on my host machine, I've added the IP address and the name of these machines so that I don't have to refer it by IP address. I can refer it by DNS names. Okay, let me log into the first machine, LXC exec MongoDB 0 dash. Okay, I am inside. And also inside each of these three machines, I've updated the etc host file. It's same as my host machine, so that these three machines can talk to each other by the name MongoDB 0, 1, and 2. So all these three machines will have the same etc host configuration and Docker version. So I've installed Docker. That's all running. Okay, so on my first machine, I'm going to start the MongoDB container. Docker run -d for daemon mode, -p. I'm going to bind 27017 to 27017 inside the container. I'm going to bind a volume data, that will be Docker volume, and I'm going to mount that under /data/db inside the MongoDB container. Mongo, and there is one option that's required, --replica set. Repl set is rs0. Okay, so here we are saying that start with the replica set rs0. Okay, so that's done. Let's do the same thing. I'm going to copy this command. I'm going to copy this command and then run it on other machines. Okay, let's log into MongoDB 1 machine and run the same command. Let's log into MongoDB 2 machine, the third machine, and then run the same command. Okay, so basically we started a MongoDB container on all the three machines. So at the moment, all these three machines, the primary, secondary, so nothing is primary. All these three machines are standalone MongoDB instances. So we are going to configure replication so that these three nodes, these three MongoDB instances will form a replica set. Okay. Let me log into one of the one of the MongoDB instance. So the command is mongo. You can use in few different ways. Mongo --host is MongoDB 0. So I'm logging into the first one. Because I'm running it on the default port 27017, I don't have to specify port. Or if you want, you can specify 27017. Okay, so I'm logged in. Or the other way is MongoDB MongoDB 0. So this is also a valid connection URI. Okay, so I'm inside here, and if I do rs, which is for replica set, rs.status, it says no replica set configuration has been received. Right, that's good, because we haven't configured any replica set at all. Okay, let me clear the screen and I'm going to go to the MongoDB documentation to see how to initiate a replica set. Okay, deploy a replica set MongoDB. So in the MongoDB, I will put a link to this description. Oh, sorry, I'll put a link for this one in the description so I can find it. It's basically the MongoDB Docs for deploying a replica set. So if I scroll down, yep, that's the command rs.initiate. Gonna copy that and let me paste it because I'm not going to paste it directly. I need to do some editing because we have our cat etc host. So we have the short name, not the fully qualified domain name. I'm going to change this from fully qualified domain name to short name. So that's the configuration, replica set configuration. We see ID is rs0, so make sure the name you give here is the name that you used to start the MongoDB containers. So that's the name of the replica set, and these are the members. ID 0, 1, 2. So there are three members: MongoDB 0, 1, and MongoDB 2. And the port number. So if you're running on a different ports, make sure to update this configuration accordingly. So let me copy that. Go back to the MongoDB server and then paste it. Okay, so that's done. And you can see now it has changed from the default prompt to rs0 colon secondary. So that's the replica set name, rs0, and that's the one that we are connected to. So it says it's secondary. Okay, let's clear the screen. And now if I do rs.status, replica set.status, okay, so we have a handful of information here. Let's go through that. Replica set.status, so that's the replica set name. That's good. And members, so we have the first member, which is MongoDB 0. And you can see the state is primary. So at the moment, MongoDB 0 is the primary. And the second member, MongoDB 1, is a secondary member. And you can see here it's syncing to MongoDB 0. So MongoDB 1 is syncing, is replicating from MongoDB 0, which is the primary. And the final replica, the final member is MongoDB 2. Again, it is another secondary node and it is syncing to MongoDB 0. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now what we did was we logged into one of the MongoDB server and we initiated the replica set. So now the way to connect to a replica set is slightly different. So what we did previously was MongoDB, and we directly pointed to one of the member of the replica set. But if you were to connect to a replica set, the idea is high availability. You don't know which MongoDB instance is up and running. So for that, you need to connect to the entire replica set, and the connection will be forwarded to one of the members in the replica set. So to do that, use the syntax MongoDB colon MongoDB 0, comma MongoDB 1, comma MongoDB 2. So you have to use all the members of the replica set. And if you're running it on a different port, use the port number 27017 colon 27017. Missed it. Okay, so similar. It's like that. And then MongoDB 0, MongoDB 1, comma MongoDB 2. Okay, so that's the list of members in the replica set, and we also need to say which replica set we are trying to connect to. So pause the options, replica set. Make sure to note the case. So it starts with the lowercase, and the yes is uppercase. Replica set equals rs0. So that's the command to connect to a replica set. Let's see if we can connect to it. No, that's because I'm using a Z shell and I need to escape the question mark. The easiest way is to surround that with a single quote. Okay, cool. So now we are connected and we are in the primary. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to a few other commands. So we saw rs.status that tells us the status of the members, where it's syncing from, and all those details. And there is rs.print replication info. So configured op log size. So that's the size I was talking about. The primary maintains an operation log, and the secondary nodes will copy the operation log and then apply the transactions to their individual data sets. So rs.print replication info, and there is also db.get replication info. I think it's again going to print the same but in a JSON format. Yeah, log size 7349, used, time, first, last, and now. Okay, it's basically the same information but presented in a different way. Okay, the other thing you could do is rs.conf to see the current replica set configuration. Okay, so here you see, so that's the first member, second member, third member, and the settings. So heartbeat interval, so it checks the heartbeat. So here it checks the heartbeat every 2 seconds. Heartbeat timeout. So if it didn't receive the heartbeat within 10 seconds, it assumes that the node is failed or something. And then election timeout, it elects a new member within 10 seconds. Okay, so that's it. Okay, let's do one more thing. Let's see which database we are connected to. DB is test. Okay, let's add a new collection. Show DB. So we have these databases. db.create collection. Let's call it hello world. Show collections. Okay, so we have created a new collection called hello world. So we connected to the replica set and it has connected us to the primary. We created the new collection. So I'm going to exit out and I'm trying to connect to a secondary node directly and see if it has been replicated. Okay, so MongoDB colon MongoDB2, for example. Okay, and now we can see rs0 and we are connected to the secondary, but this is not the preferred way. But to just show you that the replication happened, show dbs. Okay, show db. So you get this error, not master and slave OK is false. You have to do rs.slave OK. Okay, so now you should be able to do show dbs, show collections. Okay, so we originally created this collection by connecting to the primary of the replica set, and now we have connected to the secondary, but still we can see the hello world collection, which means the secondary is replicating from the primary. Okay, so what if we try to write on a secondary database server? The writes are not allowed, because if I show you here, write and reads are only from the primary, not from the secondary. Secondary is just for maintaining a backup or a standby, and it becomes primary when the primary fails. Okay, let's try to, we are connected to the secondary node directly. Let's try and create a database or a collection and see what happens. Okay, db, we are in the test database, db.create collection. Let's call it my testing. And there you go. So you get the error. The error message is not master. So you can't write, you can't alter the database because you're not a master. And the secondary nodes are not allowed to write. Okay. What else can we do? Okay, so now I'm going to show you a failover scenario. So the moment we have primary MongoDB 0, is the primary, MongoDB 1 and MongoDB 2 are the secondaries. Let's see, let's simulate a failover by logging into MongoDB 0 and stopping the MongoDB container and see what happens. Okay, so lxc exec MongoDB 0 bash docker ps. So that's our Docker container that's running. Let's stop this Docker container. Docker stop vigorous whiles. Okay, that's stopped. Now let's try and connect to the MongoDB replica set. Okay, that's replica set successfully connected to MongoDB 2 row. MongoDB 2. Okay, so now you can see, uh, let me show you, rs.status. So that's the first thing to check. Okay, so if I go to the members list, so MongoDB 0 on the state you can see is not reachable or not healthy. Okay, and the heartbeat message is error connecting to MongoDB because we have stopped the container, connection refused, but we were still able to log into the replica set and still we can do whatever we want because MongoDB 1 became the primary. That's cool. And the secondary, MongoDB 2 remains as secondary, but now MongoDB 2 was originally syncing from MongoDB 0. Because MongoDB 0 failed and MongoDB 1 took over the primary role, MongoDB 2 is now replicating from MongoDB 1. Yep, MongoDB 1. Okay, cool. Let's try and write something. Show DBs, show collections. Okay, db.create collection, second collection. Okay, show collections. Okay, cool. Our primary was down, a new secondary became the primary, and still we are able to connect and operate our MongoDB cluster replica set. Okay, so now again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into that machine, lxc exec MongoDB 0 bash, and I'm going to bring up the MongoDB container, docker ps docker ps-a docker start vigorous whiles. Okay, so that's started. Docker ps, cool, 27017, and let's connect to our MongoDB replica set. MongoDB, okay, rs.status. So let's look at what's going on now since we brought back the failed primary. Has it taken the primary role again, or is it going to remain in the secondary node and leave MongoDB 1 as the primary? Let's see, rs.status. Okay, so member 1. So you can see here MongoDB 0. Uptime is 28 seconds. We just started the container. And the state is secondary. And it's syncing to MongoDB 2. So that's something to note. So because MongoDB 0 is a secondary, and at the moment you know who is primary, MongoDB 1 is the primary, but it's syncing from MongoDB 2, which is another secondary. Okay, so the replication doesn't have to be always from the primary to secondary. The secondary can also replicate from another secondary node. So that's what I wanted to show you. So MongoDB 0 is a secondary, and it's syncing to MongoDB 2, which is another secondary node, and MongoDB 1 is primary, and MongoDB 2 is secondary, and it's syncing to MongoDB 1. Okay, cool. All right, I think that's it I wanted to show you in this video. It's the replica set and what is it used for, high availability, disaster recovery, and so on. So have a play with it. It's a cool concept, nice concept. This is required. This is a fundamental replica sets, and we will go over sharding and other bigger concepts, which also involves the replica set. So that will be multiple replica sets across different machines and so on. So this video will definitely be helpful when it comes to uh, sharding and all the other concepts. Okay, so have a play with it. If you've got any doubt or any issues, let me know. Actually, I forgot to mention something. If you want to direct your read request to secondary instead of primary. I don't want to connect to primary for read. I'm only reading the data, so I want to be able to connect to the secondary nodes for reading. Then the command is to connect to your replica set is it's the same command, MongoDB colon and the individual members, and pass in the replica set information, and you have to give one other option. Put an ampersand so that you're saying that you're passing the second option, And the option is read preference. Read preference equals secondary. There are various read preference options, read preference modes you can look at in the docs. So read preference primary, primary preferred, secondary preferred. There are lots of other, I think there are 4 or 5 read preference modes, but if you set the read preference to secondary, the reads will be going to the secondary nodes, and the writes will be by default going through the primary nodes. All right. If you got any questions or comments, or if you find that I'm doing something wrong that I shouldn't be doing, just let me know in the comments and I'll correct it. And if you've got any questions, let me know. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for your time watching this video. Make sure to subscribe and share this video with your friends if you find it useful. And I will see you all in the next video of the Monday Mongo series. All right. Catch you all. Bye bye.